Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry it took so long between uploads. A few things happened in the past few weeks. I got married for one. The other thing is I moved. This is what you guys are going to be getting for the next few videos, or until I feel like changing it. Actually, let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think about this new setup? Is there anything I should change? Is the lighting weird? Whatever you think, let me know. I figured with my return to YouTube, I would continue my ongoing journey through the Disney vault. And last time I talked about the Jungle Book, which was the last one that Walt Disney himself worked on before he died, and this next one, well, it definitely sets a tone for the company going forward. The Aristocats. Now, the Aristocats came out in 1970, was directed by Ken Anderson, and featured the 9 old men now actually becoming old men. And like I said before, this was the first Disney release that didn't have Walt's guiding hand along the entire process, and it kind of shows. While Disney was still involved in the initial process of the Aristocats, this project was already in the works when Disney was alive, but after he died, the studio was just kind of floundering. They were trying to pick up some of the pieces Walt left behind and make movies out of them, and Aristocats was one of them. Listen, I'm just going to be honest, I don't love the Aristocats. The Aristocats is such a nothing movie to me. It's a movie that I've seen a lot. Actually, me and my brother would watch this movie a lot as kids, and until I saw it recently, I could not tell you a single thing plot-wise that happens in this movie, because it's just kind of forgettable. It's about cats that live in Paris, and they get lost, and they have to find their way back home, and they come across a few colorful characters, and that's really it. And I guess that synopsis really isn't fair, because a lot of early Disney movies have similar plots. Lady and the Tramp has a similar plot. But also this movie has two things going against it for me personally that Lady and the Tramp didn't have. And for one, it's about cats, and I'm a dog person, not a fan of cats. And strike two is it's about the French. So, yeah. This movie is definitely not for me, but that doesn't mean there isn't nothing redeeming about it. Again, it's got the 9 old men stepping up into more leadership roles, so there's got to be some enjoyment value out of this. But I guess the first thing I should talk about is the opening song to the Aristocats. It's the one song that's kind of been stuck in my head since I've watched it, and it's the one that's in French, and I don't speak French, and I'm actually not a fan of the French language, but that song is catchy, and it's sung by someone who sounds an awful lot like Lumiere. And I actually didn't know this going in, but that song was written by the Sherman Brothers. Yeah, remember the Sherman Brothers, the people that may have single-handedly saved the Jungle Book from being like Sword in the Stone, and also the people that made all the amazing legendary songs from Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks and The Parent Trap and pretty much every other extremely catchy Disney song that you know, probably written by them. So, okay, that's got something going for it. Sadly, that is the only song in this movie written by them, which is kind of a shame that they couldn't get more, because there are other songs here, and I just can't help but think they would be better if they were written by the Sherman Brothers, but I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But the other thing that you learn during these opening credits is that this is going to be one of those movies that heavily reuses animation. Now, it isn't quite like Robin Hood, which we'll talk about next time, that just constantly reuses animation from previous Disney movies to save money on new animation. No, this movie has a great deal of new animation in it, but it does have some moments, which was pretty common around this time. Heck, even Jungle Book reused animations from Sword in the Stone. Bet you didn't know that. And there's a bit of that here too. They lifted a few things from like Snow White and I think maybe the Jungle Book. Really nothing too egregious. What this movie does do though that I can't excuse is reusing the same animation from previous scenes in the same movie. Yeah, you might be able to get away with reusing animation from other Disney movies, but when you're recycling animation from your own movie, it looks a little cheap. And honestly, this is probably the cheapest looking Disney movie at this point in the Disney journey, from Snow White up till now. Honestly, the studio's not having the same prestige of animation that it used to have, and that's again because of the Xerox process. I've talked about it before, talking about it again. I hate this thing. I really don't like the Xerox process, and sometimes it works okay, and this is not one of those times. In fact, I'm pretty sure the lessons that were learned in the Jungle Book about cleaning up the lines before you submit it to be Xerox processed were completely forgotten, because I suspect, and this isn't pure speculation, some of the 9 old men have actually gone on record saying that they've done this with some of their movies, that they refused to erase their pencil marks because it was part of their process. It's their work. They want to showcase the process on the screen. And from an artistic perspective, I can kind of get that, but from a visual clarity perspective, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because honestly, it just makes everything look like a sketch and unfinished and rough, and that's just not the style that people are coming to a Disney movie to see. Disney was the gold standard in animation. They were the guys. You know, you might have had some Betty Boop and Popeye from the Fleischer Studios, but really for kids, it's Disney. It's always been Disney. And what Disney prided himself on was the cleanliness of the animation, how smooth, how realistic and lifelike everything was. And he kept pushing that envelope until around Sleeping Beauty, when the cost became so expensive, and top of the cost from Disneyland, and well, now we're here. And if you want to know more about the details of that, you can watch my videos on Sleeping Beauty and some of the other ones. I think I've painted a pretty clear picture up to this point why we are where we are, and it's just not a good place to be. I just don't like it. Some people love it. I'm not a fan. But moving on. Let's talk about the characters in this movie, because this movie is about characters. It's not just random cats. We have a family of cats. You have this old woman, I think she was an opera star back in the day with some of the throwaway lines, and she's got a bunch of cats. She's got Duchess, which is like her main adult female cat, and she's got 3 kittens, Toulouse, Berlioz, and Marie. Toulouse is the orange one, Berlioz is the black one, and Marie is the white girl one. And I'm saying this out loud because I, for the life of me, could never get the cat's names straight. For some reason, they just poof out of my brain as soon as I turn off the movie. I can never remember, so I'm putting it on record now. Those are the ones. And it's also because watching it again, I've got a theory about this movie. I'll talk about that later. But I don't think the color choices were accidental either. But anyway, the madam of the house, she loves these cats. They're like her family. She's got no real family of her own, which is actually really sad now that you think about it. She's a very, very old woman. She doesn't have any kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews. Wow, way to make it sad, Disney. And this is probably their most lighthearted movie ever, and I made it sad. But anyway, she calls over her lawyer, Georges, to talk about her will and who she's going to leave all of her millions to, and she's going to leave it to the cats. And this lawyer actually does kind of crack me up. He actually reminds me a lot of my grandfather. He's just this incredibly old man. He looks like he's about 100, but he feels like he's 25. He's dancing, jumping around, got so much energy, big smile on his face, nothing gets him down. I just love seeing him. He's a lot of fun. And you know, when I was a kid, I didn't think much of this. I'm like, oh yeah, it's your pet. You can leave all your millions to your pets. Nowadays, I'm starting to see Edgar's perspective. And Edgar is the butler. He's the guy that's served this lady probably his whole life, or at least his whole adult life. And he likes the cats. He tends for the cats. He's nice to them. But when he finds out that she's not leaving him anything, that she's leaving all of it to the cats, he thinks, well, I'll just get rid of the cats then. They're just cats. And now I totally see Edgar's perspective. I probably would have done the same thing too. If I knew some lady was giving millions of dollars to the cats, well, I probably wouldn't kill the cats, because unlike Edgar, I know the cats only live so many years and then they die, and then who's the money gonna go to? You know, just wait it out. It's fine. Edgar's not that old. But no, Edgar's gotta do the whole 9 lives thing. He's doing all this math. I'm like, Edgar, you're an idiot. The cats don't actually have 9 lives, but again, kids movie, Disney movie. It is kind of funny. And you know, Edgar is a pretty fun villain to have in a movie like this, because the animation on his face, I don't know which animators did the animation for Edgar primarily, but whoever he was, he did a great job, because some of Edgar's expressions over the course of this movie, like when he finds out that the cats are going to be the beneficiaries in the will, that delivery matched with the animation on his face, the is just perfect. But yeah, once Edgar finds all this out, he's like, okay, I'm getting rid of these cats. So he kidnaps the cats and is about to throw them in the river to drown them, which, yikes movie, this is getting kind of dark. But they survive, and I'm pretty sure if Walt were still alive, he would have killed Duchess and it would have just been the 3 cats roaming around, which that would actually make for a much better movie now that I think about it. Imagine you just have these 3 kittens and they're just lost and they have to find their way home. They don't have a mother to protect them, and they come across O'Malley and the other cats and they try to figure out more about her mother from them, and Did Duchess have a past? And again, we'll come back to that later. But wouldn't that be really cool? Yeah, it would be a bit sadder, but it'd be no more sad than when Littlefoot's mother died, or when Bambi's mom died, or when Mufasa died. And, you know, there's precedent for this in Disney, or I guess Land Before Time isn't really a Disney movie, but it's Don Bluth, and he was a Disney animator. I say it counts. But no, this is, at the end of the day, a movie for babies. It's the kind of movie that you turn on to just entertain your 2-year-old for an hour and a half. But nobody dies because Edgar runs into these two dogs, Napoleon and Lafayette, and Napoleon's voiced by the guy, I can't remember his name, but he is the voice of the Sheriff of Nottingham. And he's got the best sounding country voice that I love, because he just talks like this and it's really funny. Yeah, I love this guy. He's the best. Then Napoleon and Lafayette are the best parts in this movie, hands down, because the stuff between them and Edgar and the chasing on the motorcycle and the different exchanges between Napoleon and Lafayette, the "I'm the leader, I'll say when we go." The comedic banter between Napoleon and Lafayette is great. It cracks me up. And the comedic slapstick is great. Edgar's design really lends itself with the lanky legs and the slightly overweight midsection. It's just a great design, and they have a lot of fun with that. A lot of good physical comedy. Kind of reminds me of Hook and the Crocodile from Peter Pan. There's not a lot of it in there, but when it's there, it really shines, and I like seeing it. And it's not super tame either. Edgar does actually feel pain throughout the course of these chases. Actually, I think it was Lafayette that bites on his leg a bunch. You see the goosebumps and the reverberations of the bites go through his leg, and it looks incredibly painful, and he screams, and, you know, he actually does feel pain, which is nice, because a lot of times in these movies, people go through walls and they get smashed on the head and stuff, and they just brush it off like nothing happened. But it is nice that Edgar actually got some comeuppance for what he tried to do with the kitten. But because of all this, the kittens end up getting abandoned on the side of a creek under a bridge. Edgar runs back home, and now they're all on their own. That is until they come across an alley cat named O'Malley, played by Phil Harris, who was Baloo in the Jungle Book and will be brought back to play Little John in the next movie. And Phil Harris is just perfect for this kind of role. He's got this kind of charismatic charm about him, and as soon as he opens his mouth, you immediately just want to be friends with him, which is why he worked perfectly as Baloo. I don't think he works perfectly as O'Malley, because what this movie's trying to do is create a romance between O'Malley and Duchess. You know, Duchess is your uptown rich girl that is trying to see the other side of life, and O'Malley is the tramp. And yeah, this really is just Lady and the Tramp, but Lady has kids, so there's that complication. So it's not purely a romance, it's like an adoptive father kind of thing. Which, okay, I guess I've stalled long enough. Here's my theory about this movie, because I watched this a lot as a kid. It always kind of weirded me out that the kids were all these random colors, but they weren't random colors. They're colors that we also see elsewhere in the movie. For instance, Toulouse is orange. Okay, that is a very striking color. Why orange? The movie never really said, but it is the exact same shade of orange as O'Malley, and I'm just gonna say I think O'Malley and Duchess met each other before. Now, you don't really say that in the movie. My theory is that O'Malley knows, but doesn't think Duchess remembers because it was so long ago, and Duchess doesn't want to admit to O'Malley that they met before, and that he's the actual father of her child or children. Now, jury's still out as to whether or not Marie is also O'Malley's daughter. I'm gonna go with yes, primarily because there are 3 times in this movie where O'Malley on their journey has to go out and save Marie because her little stupid self is just too adventurous and she just falls off of carts or falls in streams, and O'Malley nearly dies trying to rescue this girl. And after the second time, I'm like, O'Malley, I don't think she's worth it. But you could say that he's doing it to try to impress Duchess because he's infatuated with her and keeps talking about how her eyes are like sapphires. But I think another equally plausible theory is that he's actually Marie's dad and there's some kind of paternal instinct, because seriously, 3 times within like 15 minutes this girl needs to be saved and he keeps going after her. He doesn't really save the boys, but he definitely goes after Marie. Oh, and before you say, oh well, she can't be his daughter because she's not orange, well, she's clearly got the female genes from her mom. And yeah, I guess the boys would be orange and the girls would be white in that scenario. I think genetically there's a chance of her having white like her mom. So I think that's fine too. But the one thing that still doesn't fit in this theory is Berlioz, because he doesn't look like he has any genetic similarities to either cat. Now, if only there was a black cat that was kind of round, that had a red bow tie in this movie. That'd be really weird if there was a black cat and an orange cat, both in this movie, that Duchess comes across, and they both seem to be taken by her in some kind of strange way. Oh, but there is, because after their journey and they run into some geese, and the geese are actually kind of funny. And then when they take them to meet Uncle Waldo, and he's just this cartoon drunk of a goose. But anyway, after that little tangent, they actually go and they meet some of O'Malley's old friends, who were the alley cats, and they're these cats that are just a collection of stereotypes. And again, kind of like how Lady and the Tramp pulled a bunch of stereotypes of different ethnicities and accents and put them all together, and you could say that it's not really racist, it's diversity, because you have all these other cultures, and every culture I'd say is equally offensive. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Aristocats, because yeah, you have similar accent jokes. It's all played in good humor with the Russian cat, or the Italian cat, or the hippie cat, that I don't know if that's really an ethnicity or anything. But then you have Scat Cat, who's actually voiced by Scatman Crothers, and if you don't know who he is, he was the black-eyed Dick in The Shining, and he was probably my favorite part in The Shining. I love his character, he was great, and he's just got such a great, deep, gravelly voice. Love it. And he's like a legit musician too, and that's awesome. And they put him in here, and it's a lovely homage, and he's so cool, and he brings all of the charm that you would expect in that role, and that's cool. But then we have the drummer.
Shanghai, Hong Kong, egg foo young. Fortune cookie always wrong. That's a hot one.
Yeah, that hasn't aged well. Yeah, that's one of those things that, like, you watch as a little kid, you don't really think about it, you just think, oh, that's a funny voice. It's hilarious. He just pops in, he's all animated and wacky, he's making funny faces, he's playing the piano with chopsticks. It's fun. And then you get older and you realize, wow, that is incredibly offensive. I mean, it's still kind of funny, but I can understand why some Asian people don't necessarily like that kind of representation. I get it. In fact, I would say that's probably more offensive than what the Siamese cats were in Lady and the Tramp. So again, if we're keeping score, Lady and the Tramp has an awful lot in common with this movie, but better. So no matter if you're a cat person or a dog person, I would still say watch Lady and the Tramp instead. I think that's a much better movie. The animation's cleaner. Walt was still alive when it came out. It's got his kind of storytelling. It's got Disney really at the top of their game, visually speaking. And because of that, Aristocats in a lot of ways feels like a direct-to-DVD sequel or spin-off of the ideas that came from Lady and the Tramp. But what I really wanted to talk about in the scene was how Scat Cat reacted to seeing Duchess. And it's this instant infatuation. And okay, maybe Duchess is just super attractive. I don't know, I'm not a cat person or a furry, so I don't necessarily find her attractive, but maybe the other cats do. Maybe that's just the thing. It's those blue eyes, whatever. But her son looks an awful lot like him, and I'd be okay with that if it wasn't for the fact that really not a lot of the other cats seem to be all that infatuated. It's really just Scat Cat and O'Malley that really pay attention to Duchess in that way. And it's not even the coloring, it's the fact that they both actually have red bow ties. Now if I were to peel back the veil on this theory, okay, I might just be making all this up, because this was in a cost-cutting era of Disney. The animators were trying to save every cent. Well, I guess it wasn't really the animators, it was more the directors and the money people were trying to save every cent they could. So by coloring the kittens the colors of other cats in the movie, they could probably save on animation and coloring and paint and, you know, everything that goes into animating a movie if they can reuse stuff. If you have a scene that's from far away and you can kind of take a Toulouse model and stretch it to be an O'Malley model, and you can do the same thing with Berlioz and Scat Cat, you're gonna do that. And so I think that's really why they did that. But what they didn't have to do is give him a red bow tie. I think that is the linchpin. I think that's the animators dropping the hint that maybe Duchess does have a past. We don't know much about her, but she is awfully willing to go into these unforeseen places and cut loose with these strange cats and actually end up falling in love, or maybe falling in love a second time with O'Malley over the course of like a day. And yeah, I guess for animated Disney movies, a day is like a lifetime because people fall in love really fast in these movies. But still, this is kind of in the era when Disney was starting to get away from your typical fairy tale story. So yeah, I think Duchess has some skeletons in her closet, or at least a couple cats. Because we never know about any of the other cats' fathers. You know, that's never even brought up. And the kittens were so excited when it looked like O'Malley and Duchess were getting together and they were going to have a dad. they were so excited, and I was like, what happened to the other dads? But I don't know, I think I've already expelled way too much energy in crafting this Aristocats theory. They probably put more thought into it than the animators did, but they do end up going back home, and they find their way home, and they see Edgar. And he tries to kidnap them a second time before the old lady can find them, and he's gonna ship them off to Timbuktu. So then you have O'Malley trying to rescue them from Edgar, and he recruits Roquefort, who's this little mouse that the cats are friends with for some reason. I mean, that goes against all Tom and Jerry logic that I was brought up on. I guess maybe that says a lot more about me than it says about the movie. But this little mouse is voiced by Sterling Holloway. And Sterling Holloway is just one of those Disney voices that just pops up out of nowhere. You never know what's going to happen next. He was just in Jungle Book as the voice of Kaa. You're going to see him very soon in Winnie the Pooh as the voice of Winnie the Pooh. He started all the way back in Dumbo, I think, as the stork. I think that was his first Disney appearance. But he's here as the mouse, and his voice works okay. It's a little distracting because it's a little too Pooh-ish for my taste. He just straight up sounds like Winnie the Pooh in this movie, and it's kind of distracting. It's not like Kaa when he had to be this other personality. Here he just gotta be this sweet, cuddly little mouse. And of course, he's the one that has to go and convince all the alley cats to join in the fight, and you know, he's a mouse talking to a bunch of cats, so that's kind of fun. And so now we have this incredibly chaotic climax of all these cats fighting Edgar, and they're clawing and scratching, and I feel like there'd be a lot more blood if this were one of those Disney live action remakes. I feel like actually maybe this should be one of the Disney live action remakes. I'd actually pay money if they release a live action Aristocats. I will go see it because I just want to see what that would look like. I don't think Disney will ever do that because this movie did not make crazy money at the box office. It was a decent hit, but it wasn't super big. It wasn't the Jungle Book. It wasn't the Lion King, and apparently Disney's only remaking the ones that made a lot of money the first time because that's the model. But I would like to see what a live action Aristocats would look like. I think that'd be weirdly hilarious. I don't know if it'd be intentionally hilarious, and if they do, there better be some blood in this climax, because there is no blood, zero blood, with all these cats scratching and clawing and mauling this old British man. They just tie him up and throw him in a crate, send him off to Timbuktu, and that's it. Yeah, all that pain and suffering that we actually got when Edgar was going up against the dogs is completely gone in this climax, and I kind of miss it. And the movie wraps up in typical Disney fashion, where O'Malley becomes part of the family, and you have all three kittens and Duchess and O'Malley all taking their family photos. And in a move that actually borrows from 101 Dalmatians instead of Lady and the Tramp, she opens up her mansion to all the alley cats of Paris, and that just sounds like a terrible idea. At least in 101 Dalmatians, they bought a plot of land in the country, out of the way, with all this land for the dogs to roam free, the Dalmatian plantation. Here, it's just this mansion in the middle of Paris, and it's just going to be full of cats. And cats that don't really get taken care of. They're just alley cats, and they wander in and they leave when they please. And man, that mansion's got to be spilling like cat pee within a week. That is my worst nightmare. But because of that, we got to end on an upbeat musical number, so we get a little reprise of Everybody Wants to Be a Cat. You know, and all the racial stereotype cats are back, and they're playing us out. And yeah, that's the Aristocats. Not a lot to say about this movie. Again, pretty forgettable, pretty standard kids fare. It's kind of a love story, kind of a find your way home adventure story, but it doesn't really have any of the teeth that something like Bambi does, and it doesn't have the sweeping emotional romance that Lady and the Tramp had. It's just kind of middle of the road. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen such a mediocre Disney movie. There's really nothing spectacular about it at all. Every other Disney movie I've seen has at least one thing that really stands out. But everything in this movie just seems recycled or half-baked or just kind of a throwaway idea that maybe Disney had back when he was alive, that he wanted to tell a story like this, but I don't think it really came together the way Disney envisioned it, or really anybody envisioned it. It just feels like a corporate piece of product that they just kind of put out. And really, I don't know how many views this video is going to get, because I don't know how many of you have actually seen Aristocats or remember it enough to click on a video talking about it. But it was the next Disney theatrical release, and I'm here to talk about it. And let me know in the comments below, have you seen the Aristocats? What did you think about it? Has it been a while since you've watched it? Have you seen it as an adult? Do you think that Duchess has a past? Do you think O'Malley and Scat Cat are the baby daddies to her kids? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby, this is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.